I want to welcome everybody to this morning's committee meeting. It is Wednesday, July 8th. I hope everyone enjoyed their holiday weekend. At this point in time, we do not have a quorum, but in the interest of time, I think we should proceed. We have several items that are on the consent calendar that I think that we can deal with, Mr. City Attorney. We have one public comment card, and then I thought maybe we would begin discussions on the CRA budget. So the actions that we take from this moment on will be as communicate from the chair. So Ms. Barclay, if you could read, I think it's items 5 through 12.
Yes, sir. Item 5 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to amending a CDBG contract with the Community Development Department to extend the time of performance for the Santa Monica Western Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project.
Okay, then on item 5, we will adopt the CLA report.
Item 6.
We'll continue. Item 7.
Item 7 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO and the Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982 resolution and minutes relative to the 36th Street and Broadway Apartments project.
Okay, on item 7, we'll adopt that as adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the LAHD and the CAO relative to various actions in connection with the receipt of a $700,000 grant from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation for the Affordable Housing Preservation Program.
Okay, we'll adopt the CAO report on item 8. Item 9.
Item 9 is a motion, Reyes-Perry, relative to identifying and implementing funding in an amount not to exceed $50,000 to support the economic development activities being undertaken by Mama's Hot Tamales in the Westlake Recovery Redevelopment Project area.
Okay, we'll adopt the motion, bringing us to item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Reyes-Garcetti, relative to administrative responsibility for a community development block grant loan previously made for site acquisition and construction of the now infeasible Las Villas project.
Okay, on item 10, we'll adopt that motion. We've just been joined by my friend and colleague, Ed Reyes. That brings us to item 11, is it?
Yes, sir. Item 11 is a motion, Wizar Han, relative to reallocating Urban Development Action Grant miscellaneous revenue funds to the Barrio Action Youth and Family Center and El Centro de Ayuda for summer youth programs.
Okay, on item 11, we'll adopt that motion.
Item 12. Item 12 is a motion, Han Cardenas, relative to allocating $30,000 general fund savings to the Toberman Neighborhood Center for Community Safety Services in the area surrounding Jordan High School.
Okay, on item 12, we'll adopt that motion. And if you could please make a note that all of the actions that we currently have taken are communicated from the chair.
Yes, sir.
I have one public comment card. My friend Chuck Tennant, welcome. Oh, is it bad, Chuck? You want me to throw you out now?
No, it's a good thing.
No, go on.
Okay. Good morning. Very sad about Michael Jackson, but I never thought I'd see the day that the city of Los Angeles would ask people to donate and contribute money to pay for all the police and that to the tune of $4 million. When the city is laying off lots of people left and right. And AEG said, da-dit-da-dit-da-dot-da-dot-da-doo, doodly-doodly-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo when they were interviewed. Translated in English, it means the city of L.A. and its people. It's their city, so let them pay for it. I never thought I'd see the day that our state California legislators and government would send out thousands of IOUs that they may never pay back. It's a sad state of affairs. And I said this before, the city needs to create our own stimulus package right here and now and not wait for our state government or our government to give it to us. My mother used to say, God bless her, gee, Chuck, the world doesn't owe you a living, it's full of hard knocks. go out and find it and earn it from hard work. God helps those who help themselves. And you know what? Words of wisdom. And this city needs to take notice, our city leaders, on these words of wisdom that have always stimulated people to make their way in this world. And people have proven that for thousands of years with a plan, passion, persistence, and pride. And one final thing, I feel bad for the thousands of poor people in this city and the seniors that grew up with Michael Jackson there, and because they couldn't afford computers or internet service to go online on the fair public lottery. Boy, what a shame. I wonder how many of them really wanted to go, and I didn't think that was fair. Thank you.
Hey, Chuck, tell me one more time, what did AEG say?
Well, they were interviewed by...
No, I want,
Oh,
I just got to...
the dot, doodly doodly doo, cock-a-doodle doodle doo. No, it was the dot doo, doodly doodly doo, cock-a-doodle doo.
I got it this time.
Translated in
I got
English, it means, hey,
I
let
got
the
it.
people in the city pay for it.
Mr. Tennant, I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. What a way to start the morning. So why don't we bring up, so what is the next item? I think we go to 13 because 1 and 2 are appointments by the mayor, and I'm trying to wait for one more colleague, so then that would bring us to
Item 13.
13. Let's do 13.
Item 13 is a report from the CRA and a joint report from the CAO and the CLA relative to the Community Redevelopment Agency's 2009-2010 proposed budget and work program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Glenn Wasserman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the CRA, and Ms. Estelano will be joining us shortly. Elsie Lai, our Budget Director, has some comments to make to introduce the budget and turn it over to the city staff.
Good morning.
Good morning. Overall, our budget is decreasing kind of in the same line as the city and the state budget having problems. The CRA is also seeing resources declining. Our work program is dropping from $664 million to $448 million, a drop of 30% compared to the FY09 adjusted budget, which means that we have less resources available to get out the door. Out of that $448 million right now, we have probably about $144 million committed. And so what's happening is our work program is dropping dramatically from previous years. In the past, it's been $535 million, and the previous year, I think it was also in the $500 million range. So what's happening is not only are our resources declining, but we're also actively spending our programs. This past year, we have expected that we're going to spend close to $180 million in work program. In the prior years, it was $141 million, and then $100 million before that, and $80 million before that. So we're growing at a dramatic rate to try and get our dollars out the door and invest in our communities. As a result, what's going to happen in the next 2 years is our resources are going to decline, and we need to basically create some reserves to maintain our operating and our debt service costs. Our FY10 budget assumes a 2% decrease in new resources. Potentially, we'll...
When you say we need to create reserves, is there a plan to do so?
We are in the process of developing a plan. Right now, the county assessor is reviewing their property valuations. We should be getting updated information in August and September. So once we get that updated information, we will probably come up with a plan by project area so that we can meet our obligations in the next 2 years, depending on how we think that it may drop. I think you may have heard this before, but in the 90s, the CRA experienced dramatic drops in our revenues. In a period of 2 years, from I think 94 to 96, our revenues dropped from 26 to 47%, depending on the project area. So we are definitely trying to prepare for something similar to that in the next couple fiscal years. As you know, because our revenues come from property tax increment, we have a lag in terms of seeing our resources decline. So we expect that the worst of it would hit in FY11. So we're creating reserves. The other major point that I wanted to make regarding our resources is that general revenue is also declining. And general revenue is our source of funds that we have been using to support the land acquisition fund. This coming fiscal year, it's dropped to about $6.8 million, all of which is being used for project area subsidies, which is basically subsidies for project areas that can't support themselves with their own tax increment. So as a result, we essentially have no additional funding to support the land acquisition fund. And this coming fiscal year, there is no more new projects that are being supported by the land acquisition fund. And finally, there are a bunch of initiatives that we are making and taking to try and be fiscally prudent. One is that we cut operating expenses to self-fund the cost of living adjustments, are basically increased COLA percentages, so that we don't have to increase our total operating costs. Our operating costs have remained flat as it was for FY09. And also we are trying to diversify resources. We have made concerted efforts to apply for grants to supplement our tax increment to make sure that we can try and be sustainable and maintain our work program in the next couple of years. And finally, as you know, the state, to balance the state budget, there's a lot of pending legislation to try and transfer redevelopment tax increment into the state education revenue augmentation fund. Thank you. For ERAF. So the story changes every week. Right now, we are still in potentially maybe giving funds to ERAF in FY10 and FY11. So we have set aside the funds that we expected to give in FY09, and we're holding it there until we figure out what exactly is going to happen up at the state.
Okay. Anybody else?
Lisa Johnson-Smith, City Administrative Officer. Just to add that, we share the concerns the agency has of their tax increment, and all their other resources are declining. Their projections, year-to-date projections, have decreased. They had projected $211 million of net tax increment, and they're in the neighborhood of about $128 million year-to-date tax increment as of April 2009. This budget does not include any bond issuance proceeds, and the 2008-09 budget had included $33 million of bond proceeds. We had removed those from the budget in an earlier action because of the uncertainty of the bond market. In council yesterday, the agency did approve, the city did approve for the agency to issue up to $85 million of bonds if the market improves in 2009-10 and 2010-11. But our office shares the concern about the two major issues of the agency. One, the decrease of the tax increment flow over the next several years based on historical data of the recession from 1993 and 94, as well as potential ERAF taking of the state, which could be up to $44 million over a 3-year period if they're successful, and the state is in the legislation they're proposing, which would be $14.5 million each year over a 3-year period. So what we've asked that the agency do is to report back to the City Council in 60 days with how the impact of the ERAF legislation would impact their work program, as well as their potential decline in tax increment, and how that might affect their ability to pay their operating costs and their debt service, and what plan they would have to mitigate that, and if that could potentially impact the city's general fund. I know in past legislations, ERAF proposals have stated if the local CRA could not pay those, the city general fund would be, the city would be the source that they would come to the money. So we want to make sure that the agency has a plan in place to deal with these potential losses of revenue and this potential taking by the state, so that would protect the city's general fund. In addition to that, there were several changes through the city's 2009-10 budget process to AB 1290. The city currently has $10 million in the unappropriated balance, pending verification of the actual revenue for the agency for 2009-10. So what we have included in our report is a recommendation that the agency not obligate the city's share of Assembly Bill 1290 revenues for 2009 and 10, pending further discussion and verification of the proposed revenue amounts. The agency changing their quarterly status report that's ending for June 30th, 2009, changing it from budgeted numbers to actual receipts. So we have a better picture of what the revenue projection is for more accurate accounting of the funding. And then in October 31st, 2009, once the agency has opportunity to see what their revenue picture is and do their year-end closing, return back to the city with a report. And also, the agency's been instructed to consult with the mayor and the affected council offices on the AB 1290 funds and what the available balance is. So we've recommended that the agency schedule meetings with the various offices and determine a listing of the final projects that for commitments and plan uses, so they can present that information to the city for review in October 2009. And then at that point, any money that's determined that's available would be transferred over to the city's general fund. So in order to mitigate any impact to the general fund, we're recommending that all the funds be looked at. Determinations of the appropriate amount required to meet budgeted AB 1290 payments or council uses should be made prior to the transfer to the general fund. And that's an effort to mitigate any money later having to be transferred back. Subsequent to that October 2009 report, the agency is looking at going to the process that they currently implement with their other taxing entities, where once a year they would look at their tax increment in the rears and send a letter and a check with a determination of how much revenue was actually created in that fiscal year prior. So you would be getting those funds in October of the year preceding the fiscal year for the general fund. The agency typically does a carryover report also after the August year-end closing. So we're looking for the agency actually to come back with their carryover report in October 2009. And that also would be an indication of where they are with their unanticipated carryover, their tax increment. Gives us a better picture of their revenue projections. The agency did ask us to make 2 amendments from the budget after it was released. The first amendment was to the Pacoima Panorama City Budget and Work Program. They requested that the city had recognized an advanced carryover from the 2008-09 budget in the housing line item of $2 million into the 2009-10 budget line item of housing. As a result of that recognition of funds, it increases the agency's budget from $680.1 million to $682.1 million. The agency also requested they had allocated $900,000 in their general revenue project subsidy funds from the Watts redevelopment project area, and they meant to allocate that to the Watts corridor redevelopment project area. And this is for their ability to continue processing their Watts corridor plan amendment. So they're asking us to make a transfer of that $900,000 and put it in the appropriate line item.
Okay, we've been joined by Mr. Cardenas and Ms. Perry. So, Mr. City Attorney, we do have a quorum at this point in time. Good morning. Cecilia, did you want to make a statement, or could we just go straight into
I think we go straight into it. I think Elsie made our main points. I mean, you've heard about the decline in revenue. You've heard about our anticipation. I think the recommendations from the CAO-CLA report are excellent, very in line with where we're trying to have a very prudent approach the next couple of years. The key point to make is that we really do need to hold on to that carryover and set aside a pretty healthy reserve to pay debt service and legal obligations and operating expenses in the 2 lean years we anticipate in the future. We won't really have good data on actual declining property values until September. So I don't know whether in 60 days we will have that number. 60 days will still be on. But certainly in September, we should have data from the county on how property taxes have fallen.
Okay. You're not adding any new positions, or?
No, we are not.
Okay. Mr. Cardenas?
Sure. I have a few questions.
In fact, Mr. Reyes, can you take over for me for 1 second?
I have a question about the 3 additional positions that are currently assigned to the mayor's office but are paid out of the agency budget. Can you expand on that? What exactly does that mean?
It means that the mayor's office has 3 positions that we're paying for.
Okay, so do they sit,
They sit in the mayor's office.
they sit at a desk in the mayor's office?
Yes, they do, Councilmember.
Okay, but they're paid out of your payroll.
Yes, they are.
What segment of your payroll are you getting those three positions from?
It's operating.
It's our operating budget, it's just our overhead.
Just general overhead?
Right.
Okay. So you have extra money?
No, we do not.
So where in the charter does it address it, or is it silent on,
I believe it's silent on this matter.
it's silent on this matter? So basically, this is something that can be done.
I don't
Not like
I don't
any
know that.
rules are
I know
being
that there
broken.
had been an effort to do an amendment to the oversight ordinance to make it explicit that the mayor's office could do this. I'm not sure what happened with that.
It's been transmitted to this committee, but it has not been.
Yeah, so that, I know that action has come forward, but I don't know what's going to happen with it.
Okay, so it's within our council process right now,
Yes,
those
it
three
is.
positions. So who dictates to those individuals what they do on a daily basis?
The mayor's office.
The mayor's office does. Has anybody explained to you from the mayor's office what their titles would be?
They're already there. One is the executive assistant to Bud Overham. The other is the head of the mayor's business team, and the third is Steve Andrews, who's working as a senior advisor, I think, on issues related to block grant and economic development generally.
So 2 or 3 of these positions are related to the mayor's business team.
I think all three. It's really all three, yeah.
Well, that doesn't go over well in my office because all they've been doing is getting in my way and my staff's way. Some very interesting things have been happening in and around those guys when they show up on a project. Okay, so I guess we're dealing with another transmittal on that one. Now, when it comes to the land acquisition fund, there was a $1 million deficit to the fund?
Correct.
Okay, how did that happen?
Because the east side did not issue debt, and that debt was counted on to be allocated as part of the land acquisition fund. Then there had been a motion in this committee to have, and there also had been a motion in this committee that city center and city industrial not repay the land acquisition, the general revenue, which then funds the land acquisition fund. East side Adelante, there was a motion in this committee to not have them repay. And at council yesterday, I think it's noted in the report, in council yesterday, there was an amendment to the bond issuance matter that fixed that, so that Adelante East Side will transfer $1 million, repay that to the land acquisition fund, and that'll enable us to fill that gap as we had planned.
Okay, so basically, we're back in order where we've identified where that $1 million is going to come from.
At least for that. And there certainly is an over-allocation. There were other projects on the list that this committee and the council had identified that they wanted to have funded out of the land acquisition fund. But since we don't have repayment from City Center and Central Industrial and Adelante East Side, those projects won't be able to move forward until such time as those funds are repaid.
Okay. And so at this time, there's no action being taken to fund those projects?
No.
Out of the land acquisition
No,
fund?
because there is no funding available.
Okay.
We also included a report back on the evaluation of the fund. The land acquisition fund was created as a 2-year demonstration project, and it sunsetted on June 30th, 2009, unless the council and the agency extended it. Because of lack of available resources, the agency in the budget has recommended that the program cease to exist. And so we've asked for evaluation of the program and the various, in addition to addressing any unfunded council-requested priority projects, if additional funds should materialize.
Right.
Okay.
But at the moment, we don't have funds for land acquisition fund anymore.
Okay. So basically, it looks like it's sunsetted?
It's over.
Okay. So the only thing we can count on now is that report and the evaluation, and then in the future, then we can all give an opinion as to whether or not we should reenact such a fund again.
Yeah, but Councilman Cardenas, I want to be clear, given where we're headed financially, I think it's very doubtful we will have additional resources in the general revenue that would be able to fund that land acquisition fund. We've been very upfront about that. We think it was very, very successful for the 2 years that we were able to do it, but at this point, we're going to need all of our general revenue to fund operating deficits and subsidies for project areas that simply can't handle their expenses.
Okay, my last question has to do with when it comes to property taxes, the fact that property tax collection has gone down, and currently and recently. How is that affecting your department?
It will affect it dramatically in the following year. We're right now anticipating, as you've seen in our budget, a decline in revenue of about 2% for property tax increment. We thought it was conservative at the time we prepared this budget because everybody was still telling us there was going to be a growth. I think now we may have to come back to you as part of our mid-year adjustment and adjust that downward. But we won't have actuals from the county assessors until September. In the next year, just again, I'll reiterate kind of the projections. We believe that over the next 2 years, we could experience somewhere between a 26 to 47% decrease in our tax increment revenues. And that means that almost half of our project areas, if you project that out, nearly half of our project areas will have a hard time covering their debt service, legal obligations, and their operating expenses. If you put ERAF on top of that, it's pretty devastating. So it will affect the agencies, but that's new revenue. So if we were trying to pay that out of new revenue coming in, we wouldn't be able to cover it. But we do have this carryover. So that carryover, we're going to need to carve out a piece of that carryover to get us through these lean times in the next 2 years. And that's the report back that we're talking about with the CAO and the CLA. So it means what we may have to do is to kind of cordon off a chunk of money across different project areas and say, although it's available, you can't touch it because this is the reserve to handle the lean times that we know are coming. We're just not sure exactly how lean.
Okay. Now, when it comes to property taxes, even though a property gets foreclosed on, even in a foreclosure, isn't the property taxes still in first place when it goes to sale?
Yes.
The property taxes have to be covered?
Yes.
So is there any hope in sight? But because every single property that stopped paying property taxes or for some reason gets an adjustment downward or what have you when it transfers ownership because at a lower value, a lower assessed value or sale value, which is now the new assessed value, is there any light at the end of the tunnel or any silver lining on the fact that when these things eventually go to foreclosure or what have you, and it does change hands, some of that money is replenished, or that's still minuscule compared to the big picture?
I think it helps, but it doesn't really mitigate the fact that the overall assessed values, that all of those downward shifts in assessed values is significantly lower. So as many of us receive these notices from the county tax assessor, lowering our property tax payments due because our assessed value has been reduced, that's happening all over the county, and it's happening all over our project areas. So take that into account. If you look at what happened in the 90s, we could see as much as a 50% drop in revenue.
How much?
26 to 47%.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, I just also wanted to say that from what we saw in the 90s, it took almost 9 years to start generating the same TI that we did before the drop. So even after the big hit of property reassessments and whatnot, we saw very modest growth over the years, and it took 9 years.
And Bunker Hill took 12 years to recover.
So the decline is dramatic, but no matter how you slice it, the regain is slow.
It's very slow, very, very slow. That's the hard part about being so dependent on property tax increment, which is why we have placed such an emphasis on trying to go after grant funds, and we've had some success. I mean, we did very well on the call for projects. Looks like we're going to get about $14 million. I think on the Prop 1C, we got $31 million in transit-oriented development projects, $87 million in infill infrastructure grants in projects in our project areas. So we still want to get money directed to these activities. It just may not be tax increment. It's going to be coming from other sources.
Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to ask for a number of report backs. I want to explore the general revenue portion of this budget a bit more, and I'd like to get a breakdown from where the general revenue is being generated from. I've reviewed attachment 17 of the CLA-CAO report, but specifically, I want to know where the projected interest income on new and carryover resources is generated from. I would also like a breakdown on which new project subsidies are being funded with general revenue. I understand the project area is generating, or project area operating subsidies, but I need more information on what is being funded with the $2.7 million allocation to new project subsidies, and I need to know whether this is for actual projects or for additional operating costs, for example, like staff, and I'd like that back in written form. The 2007-2008 CRA budget was the first year the council approved the shift of general revenue being dedicated to the project area it was generated in to an agency-wide pool. It was done to establish the land acquisition fund. But this year, we do not have a land acquisition fund. So let me just be clear, for the record, it's not my intent to defund any project areas that need support, and I'm specifically directing those comments to Mr. Parks in particular. But I believe we have need to have a larger policy discussion regarding general revenue and its use. We recently had this discussion about the Adelante East Side project area and have also had it regarding Central Industrial and the City Center project areas. Some of you may remember a few months ago I introduced a motion asking that the general revenue generated from Cal Plaza rents be dedicated to the Museum of Contemporary Art. Now, MoCA and CRA have had some discussions regarding ways CRA can support improvements at MoCA, and I would like to make sure that these discussions continue. I am of the belief that we should allow general revenue to remain in the project area it was generated. I have a real problem that $2.8 million generated in the general revenue in Bunker Hill is being taken out of the downtown region when we have so many needs. In particular, many of you know I do have the largest homeless population in the city in downtown Los Angeles, and probably a very high, among the highest concentration of neighborhoods south of the Santa Monica Freeway, with concentrated poverty in the Council District 9 corridors project area. So I'm going to make a motion or request that we hold the general revenue portion of the budget in committee because of the aforementioned report backs that I've requested. In addition, I need a question answered as part of the report backs on the land acquisition fund, and I believe it was supposed to be a revolving loan fund, and the process for how that was to be maintained, and answering the questions of whether there was to be payback or not. I would also like to ask for a report back on the Los Angeles Development Fund, and to ask the CRA and the CLA to report back to this committee in 30 days on what projects have been funded with the Los Angeles Development Fund and what the process is for submitting projects. That's the end of my request.
Okay, that's it? Before I recognize Mr. Reyes, Ms. Perry, you do have a document detailing what you just, and you've submitted that?
Yes.
Okay, then that's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to her.
Okay. With that, I think Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your presentation, you talked about potential strategies for how we deal with future needs and referred to grants and application to grants to acquire more funds. Can you just speak to that strategy? Is there an area you're going to explore? Is there somewhere in the federal government that you're favoring? Just want to get a feel for how you see the leveraging potential of CRA's assets and your projects and programs, how they're right now, and many of them are probably at pivotal stages. Property's been acquired, you have buildings that are functional, you have tenants that are in there. Obviously, we have to put some of our plans on hold, but how we maintain those buildings, and I just want to get a feel for what you see in the horizon given these rather stark conditions.
I appreciate that opportunity. Certainly, the MTA call for projects and the Prop 1C funds are two places we focused a lot of effort, and I think we're going to be quite successful. Certainly on Prop 1C, we did great. I mean, we did really very well for our projects and our project areas, and it looks like the recommendations on the call for projects are also very positive. I think it was the $7 million. $7 million out of the
So can you give me an example of what that would mean for...
That would mean leveraging our resources. If we're going to be doing streetscapes or pedestrian improvements or those kinds of activities that are really on-the-ground infrastructure investments, so our money would become a match for $7 million in MTA money. Likewise, on Prop 1C, when we put money in to support an affordable housing project, we're getting Prop 1C money to help get it over across the finish line, and our money goes farther. We don't have to put as much subsidy in to generate the same number of units. Other potential funding sources, you mentioned the federal government. We're looking at things that might be available through the energy efficiency grants. Maybe we could use that as a way to help do weatherization programs in low-income areas. We've looked at some business assistance programs. We are exploring other ways to try to help do business assistance, particularly industrial and manufacturing retention, because we're really focused on jobs. Right now, we really want to do everything we can to retain the jobs we have and grow them at a future opportunity. So that's one strategy. Another strategy is, we acquire land and we dispose of it by either selling or leasing it to private developers. We really want to move the agency back to the era when we used to lease land, ground lease land, that would then throw off general revenue every year, which is why we have $2.8 million coming off every year the California Plaza ground lease, right? Because the agency back then had the foresight not to sell it, but to ground lease it, and we've had that steady stream of income ever since. That's what we're going to be doing with the Clean Tech Manufacturing Center. That's what we hope to do with other significant pieces of land where we can ground lease rather than simply sell the property. That's another potential source of general revenue in the future. And then we want to look at other innovative ideas to do revenue sharing. It's a tough time. There isn't a lot of revenue in the private sector, not very much to share, but we need to think of creative ways to get into a more revenue sharing environment. And the controller's audit recommendations recommended that we do that, and we are following those recommendations.
In the mayor's address to the city, he made reference to the Clean Tech program.
Yeah.
And as I look at the geography of this Clean Tech, a lot of it is in CRA areas. There was a discussion earlier about 3 staff persons that are funded through the CRA who are in the business team.
Mm-hmm.
To what degree is there coordination between the mayor's office, the CRA, and the respective council members and the direction they're going in their Clean Tech?
We have certainly been in close coordination with Councilmember Weezar's office, where the Clean Tech Manufacturing Center, that 120-acre piece, is located in his district, and we've worked very closely with them on that. The mayor's office has obviously been involved as well. The overall Clean Tech strategy, we've worked pretty closely with the mayor's office on it, and as opportunity sites become available to try to attract clean tech businesses, we work with individual council members. We are very excited about making sure that clean tech corridor concept in the downtown area, which is part of the key concept, is that it's along the revitalized LA River, right? That's very consistent with the River Master Plan. So we've been working with your office on opportunity sites there. So as opportunities come up, we work with council offices. I can't speak to the relationship between the mayor's office and the council offices, but we certainly know if there's property in a council district, it might be available to attract a clean tech business. We're going to contact that council member immediately because they're a huge asset in selling those properties or selling the idea of LA as a good place to work.
Okay. One of the report backs I'd like to see is the properties that were acquired in that 2 to 3 year sprint that we went through. If we just get a status of what their current conditions, what are the prevailing conditions, and what we need to do with them in the next 2 to 4 years, and what steps we're taking to respond to this new reality of deficits, and see how we can manage that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing that there are no more questions, then without objection, we will adopt the CAO and CLA report with Ms. Perry's amendments. Thank you. And Mr. Reyes's amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, now that we have a quorum, unless there's an objection by a member of this committee, can we have unanimous votes on the consent items that we did as communiques of the chair earlier?
Right, and that would be to approve item 5, continue 6, approve the CAO reports on 7 and 8, and approve the motions 9, 10, and 11 and 12.
Okay, then without objection. Okay, that brings us to items 1, I think, Ms. Barclay, I don't want to do your job. That we have items 1 through 4 remaining,
Yes, sir.
and they are commission appointments.
Yes, sir.
If we could just have the 2 possible new commissioners and the two reappointees come forward, Lula Tanua, Beatrice, Ms. Carr. There's a chair for each and every one of you. Okay, let's start off with item number 1. In fact, can Mr. City Attorney, can she just read all of the items and then we will, what? Let's, read all 4 and then we can just have at it.
Yes, sir. Items 1 through 4 are communications from the mayor relative to the appointments of Dr. Lula Bailey Balton to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of Commissioners, the appointment of Ms. Tanua Thrash to the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, the appointment of Ms. Beatrice Stotzer to the HACLA Commission, and also the appointment of Ms. Margarita C. Carr to the HACLA Commission.
All right, good morning and welcome to everyone. We'll start off with you, Doctor. If you would tell us why would you want to be appointed at this point in time? Anyway, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this.
I'm glad you backtracked that question. I certainly enjoyed the opportunity to hear the report from the CRA to you this morning. As you said, I'm Dr. Lula Balton and am the founder and CEO of the West Angeles Community Development Corporation. I have committed almost 2 decades of my adult life. I have lots of decades before and after that, I hope, to really doing development, job creation, improving the living standard of people in Los Angeles. My commitment has been focused on South Los Angeles. We have been able to develop about 500 housing units, create several hundred jobs, actually close to 1,000 jobs now, and actually make some visible change along the Crenshaw corridor by an investment of $50 million. We are the largest employer and the largest landholder in the area. My focus and interest has been broadly addressing the needs of those without a voice in the city of Los Angeles. I am a lawyer by training, a college professor by 15 years or 20 years now experience. My interest and mission is to increase social and economic justice in our city, for us to do it compassionately, for us to demonstrate what a beloved community is to be, and to give my full effort in doing so. I have worked with the CRA in the developments and projects we've done. We haven't always agreed, but we have always worked together to improve the lives, and I'm honored to have been singled out. I consider it a great honor to be able to be a voice for what I consider in many cases those who don't have a voice at the table, but hear what's going on through the radio and through the news, as opposed to being at the table when the policies are being made. So to the extent that this opportunity would allow me to be a voice, to speak for those who don't have a voice, to represent those that are customarily unrepresented, to be an ear in the city for that same population, I am deeply humbled and honored for this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, I have absolutely no questions because of the relationship that I've had with you. I guess the only commitment I want, or the only thing that I might have some concern about, I want to make sure this doesn't jeopardize our shared vision for Crenshaw, the Crenshaw corridor, and all of the work that we have planned for the future. So I have no questions. Mr. Reyes?
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Balton.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to hear the accomplishments and your commitment to the community. And but just one thing that I just wanted to ask the question, as a community development corporation, looking at these lean times and seeing what the CRA is going through, would your appointment here in any way limit or maybe compromise the leveraging potential of how to work with CRAs and CDCs. In general, in principle, you have these resources that you want to be able to leverage. Will that be limiting your capacity in dealing with financial arrangements or scenario building or economic development? Is that a possibility? Is that a concern at all?
It's certainly a possibility, but it's not a concern. Given my background in the law, I know what I can do, but I can't, and I'm hopefully wise enough to understand that there are people who are experts in that arena and can tell me the limits and the boundaries. I am interested in all of Los Angeles and all of those people who don't have a voice, and I don't see it as a conflict. In fact, I see it as another voice at the table that might help, in fact, improve all of those things. I find that when any part of the ship goes up and the other part doesn't, the ship sinks. And I think that's a bit of what we're experiencing. We've had a great ride, but everybody wasn't on in the same part of the ship. And it's imperative that we include all of the citizens of Los Angeles, that we include those who have been voiceless, but who have been the labor, who have been building the city, who are, in my view, an integral part of the beloved community. And I don't see having their voice at the table as any way detrimental to the floating of the whole ship.
Great. And again, it's in a time of constrainment, of decline and economic woes, the opportunities aren't as great as they used to be. So I look forward to working with you and seeing how we can continue to raise that ship. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ms. Perry?
Yeah, quick comment and question. And I know two of the ladies up here, Lula and Bee, and I've known them for a long time, and we're on Ms. Bolton right now, so I want to say, Lula, that I do, Ms. Bolton, I do support your CRA commission appointment, but I wanted to just raise a couple of issues, because as you know, Mr. Weston and I, along with Mr. Parks, sit on the Metro Expo Authority, and we are running very close to the CDC, that you also work, and while at this point I don't think we're crossing any lines in terms of CRA involvement, I wanted to raise that as an issue and just put it out there on the record, and to the extent that West Angeles Kojic CDC has any involvement, a crossover, that you are able to be made aware through city, even though you're a lawyer and you understand the nature of the potential for conflict, but that I want to put it on the record that the redevelopment agency and whatever ethics commission make sure that they have proper training for you and all of the commissioners, whether they're returning or new, on the issue of potential for conflict disclosure. We have a number of commissioners who have complained to us that they haven't gotten the appropriate training that they need, and I want to make sure that they get the education that they need. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a report back, and the CLA can do that for maybe 30 days from now, and compile information from the CRA on how new and returning commissioners are educated about redevelopment issues and issues of conflict. The other issue I wanted to raise, and it has nothing to do with the appointee, but I'm just looking at the CRA commission. Currently, 3 of the 7 commissioners live in council districts that don't have redevelopment areas. And so, again, I want to raise the issue of balanced representation on the commission by having commissioners who actually live in districts that have redevelopment areas. I think we expect a lot from our commissioners, and it's a volunteer position, and then we ask them to become experts, but we don't always offer them the training and the support that they need. So I wanted to just put that on the record, ask for the report back, and congratulate Ms. Bolton in advance.
Okay, consider that done. We will get the report back. Any other questions? Then, without objection, we will recommend to the council that you be appointed.
Thank you.
Item number 2, Sanu. Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Good morning, council members. I'm Tanua Thrash, an Angelino native, grew up here in the city of Los Angeles. I'll start a little bit about my education. I went to Cal Berkeley as well as MIT, where I really focused on urban, community, and economic development, and was always a mission and a goal of mine. I've spent my career prior to coming back to Los Angeles nationally, working in San Francisco, Boston, as well as internationally.
You went to MIT?
Yes, sir.
You didn't get involved in that card counting? 21, and are you one of those exciting people that put on disguises and went to Vegas and took it by storm?
What they have been able to do to create a legal atmosphere for themselves is write a book about the whole strategy. So,
It funded graduate school.
it was a fun experience, I must admit. People do ask me, was it difficult? And it was both difficult and fun. Since that time, I returned to Los Angeles, worked for West Angeles Community Development Corporation under the leadership of Bishop Blake and Dr. Lula Balton, where I managed the housing and economic development portfolio there. I've had extensive experience throughout the state. For the last 4 years, I've served on the commission with the LA Convention and Exhibition Authority, so do understand the roles and the responsibility of the commission. I'm very honored that the mayor has asked me to join now the Housing Authority. I'm excited about the initiatives that are happening there at the Housing Authority as both a local girl who understands the neighborhoods where most of the housing authorities are housing projects are located, as well as my background in the real estate field. Currently, I work with my own company, Green Door Advisors, where I advise a number of firms around the city regarding urban economic development, doing everything from market analysis to financial analysis and assisting those projects through development management services.
Ms. Thrash, I again have no questions personally. It relates to you. Mr. Reyes, I think.
First, I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
And Angelina, great success. I just wanted to introduce to you a concept and a strategy around the need housing area, where we're trying our best to look at ways to decentralize poverty in that particular pocket. And great strides have been made in other housing authority areas, and as needed. I mean, very important that it occurs. But in my office, we've been working to re-entitle whole corridors. We finished the LA River Master Plan. We're looking at how the various community plans are shifting to increase these capacities within the zoning around this area to decentralize that poverty. And it's a project that I'm hoping you can take a look at. I know Commissioner Stotzer has been well informed, and now it's about pushing the buttons and making the necessary decisions. And I look forward, if invited, to present what we're doing in my district in regards to this meat housing facility. It's been there since the 1930s, 40s. In the neighborhood, it's known as Dogtown. And I know grandfathers who are still aligned with Dogtown. And so how we change that generational cycle of downward spiral because of the poverty and lack of education is going to be key in how we change the urbanscape and the actual makeup of those land use patterns. So that's something I want to be able to discuss with you and the commission. I'm hoping I get invited one day to do a little tap dance before the commission and kind of show what we're doing there. But thank you, and I congratulate you for all your successes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Cardenas.
What do you do over at Green Door?
Real estate advisory services, financial analysis, market analysis, development management services, so for those urban projects that need that kind of assistance.
So your company comes into play when
Pre-development.
a developer wants to
Developer, usually a lot of nonprofits, faith-based organizations, sometimes working with municipalities. When developers are looking to develop a site, they need to understand what's the highest and best use, or need to run financial modeling to try and understand how to leverage public-private dollars.
And do you work with for-profit developers?
I do.
Okay. But you mentioned mostly not-for-profit developers.
That's most of our client base.
Why is that?
That's who we choose to work for, because most of the neighborhoods that we work in, those are usually the lead developers.
But don't you agree that if for-profit developers understood these communities, that they would be investing in these communities?
Absolutely. Oh,
But
we
you
don't.
just said that you choose to work mostly with not-for-profits, et cetera.
Those are usually agencies as well that need additional capacity. A lot of the for-profit developers have a number of folks on their team who have a lot of experience, who've done development before, and they may have the financial resources that possibly some of the other organizations in those neighborhoods do not.
Yeah, but obviously, if they're not investing in these communities and they don't see the for-profit ability, then they're lacking in the expertise that you bring to the table, right?
Right. And a lot of times what does happen is that there is an opportunity to work with some nonprofits and bring some for-profit developers on board. But a lot of times it takes those nonprofits to do those catalytic projects to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between a for-profit and a not-for-profit? Give me an example. I mean, I know legally what the difference,
Sure.
but when it comes to the business of investing in a challenged community,
There is no difference then. It's legally the same.
legally the same?
What you've described, if you understand legally the 501c3 versus a business that is not, then that's essentially the only difference.
Yeah. But that's what I said, not that aspect of what the difference is, but what's the difference between a for-profit and a not-for-profit when it comes to utilizing public dollars?
It really just depends on what the public dollars are and whether a for-profit or a nonprofit can have access to those particular dollars. I'm not sure where the question is going, sir.
Well, this is where I'm going. If you have a for-profit developer and then you have a not-for-profit development organization, and say they get a loan from whatever state, city, or what have you, and they default on that, should they be treated any different than not-for-profit versus the for-profit?
Sir, certainly not.
Have you ever seen that they are treated differently?
No, I have not.
Well, welcome to Los Angeles, because they are treated very, very differently. Thank you.
It's obvious to me that you did go to MIT. You just sparred with Professor Carter. Without objection, Ms. Thrash, we will recommend to the full city council that you be appointed. Beatrice, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm not going to ask you why you want to do this or what your background.
You should know better by now.
That's basically what I want to ask. Okay, because you've been here for a bit, and Marguerite, I'm going to ask you the same thing. So, what were the highs? What were the lows? What do you look forward to doing? So that would be interesting, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Wesson. It has been an amazing journey since the mayor has asked me to serve on the Housing Authority, and I would like to thank the council as well as the mayor for another opportunity. When my first meeting at the commission was the likelihood of looking at $40 million worth of fraud, possible issues regarding security. We were still under almost the receivership MOU with HUD. It was a very, very serious meeting in which I thought to myself, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Since then, because of the kinds of leadership that were put in place with my predecessor and having the executive director, Rudy Montiel, and changing the scope of just ethical standards and the kind of safeguards that he has been able to put in, I have been on a journey with my fellow commissioners that has been really remarkable to see the transformation of the Housing Authority. Because of the leadership that we have put in place a strategic plan that was devised not by the staff, but literally my first year as chairperson of the commission, we put together a community meeting of all stakeholders all in one room. The community, the residents, the landlords, we had LAPD, LAHD, CRA, every stakeholder that you can think that would touch the Housing Authority to sit down and for 2 days discuss the vision of what would be a greater LA and a greater quality of life for everyone in the room. As a result of that, we came up with about, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, 18 non-negotiable issues that were really literally the platform by which we developed our strategic plan. And every commissioner received, in terms of Councilwoman Perry's question, a training on the ethics, the standards, the issues for every single department of the City of Los Angeles, so that we could all understand the incredible responsibility and our obligation to work together with all departments and with the city to ensure that we're changing the lives of the worst housing stock in the City of Los Angeles. That was then the amazing commitment from everyone that we would literally have goals and objectives that really made sure that everyone understood and was transparent on the values and the actions that the agency was going to take. From that point on, we started the journey of transforming Jordan Downs. And we were able to purchase property adjacent to Jordan Downs that are now in the forefront of the master planning process of really looking at how are we going to take Jordan Downs and really create a catalyst for this city. So my goal from the very beginning and that of the mayor was to literally transform public housing, and now at the end of my tenure, I think we're on the road to getting there. It would not have been made possible without the leadership of the staff at HACLA, without the support of the Housing Department, of the CRA, of the council, or the mayor, and especially of the commissioners who, by the way, I'm very proud to say, not as a sexist comment, but it is an all-woman commission board. And so we like to get work done. We like to be challenged.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And I feel very honored that the vision of getting rid of the worst housing and giving residents what they deserve has been part of my tenure there, and hopefully whatever little time I have left there, we will see children's eyes be brighter, and everybody understanding that we can transform a little part of Los Angeles when we all work together.
Well, I'm sure there's no problem in having an all-female board. I'm sure if we look back in history, we will find that it was male-dominated at one point in time. So
absolutely,
this is a welcome change. Before we do questions, Margarita, why don't you basically respond as to Beatrice, and then we'll have both of you.
Okay. Well, I figured good morning to the council. I figured if I wanted to become a councilwoman, I'd start off as a commissioner. And
you almost make me swallow my feet.
That's the first time I heard that. No. This has been my...
Wait, you don't live in my district.
Watch out now. No.
Who are you warning here?
No, you know what? I think she's saying, Mr. Cardenas, don't you ask me a question.
I know where you live.
Habla español, so cuidado,
This has been my first year as Housing Authority Council and Commission. I'm still on Council Commission, and it's been a delight for me because it has opened a door that is slightly different from the regular community development that I was doing. A little bit on my background, I graduated from Southern University in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, and I was headed towards speech pathology. Ended up as an insurance agent for Allstate Insurance, and came back, and my family is very involved in the community, and ended up with One United Bank, Washington Mutual, and now with Wells Fargo Bank. Ended up in financing for mortgages. And I also have a construction company with my family. We have a foundation that's named after my grandfather, so very involved within the community. But Housing Authority has allowed me to really be within the trenches. My first year, my goal was to get involved and just really really take a step back and just speak to the people. I work with the Jordan Downs Advisory Board, Public Safety. My goal was just to listen and to speak with one-on-one with our Housing Authority staff and with Commissioner Stotzer, who has been wonderful, and just really see where we are going, where we've been, understand the history of the Housing Authority. And our National Housing Authority gives us quite a bit of training to be a commissioner, from a handbook, workshops. So it's been very informative for me, and I really look forward to moving forward with our new Jordan Downs coming up within the next few years. And it's just been, I look forward to continue to work with the Housing Authority and with our city.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Cardenas?
Oh, okay.
Mr. Reyes?
When we, first, congratulations getting over that hoop and that threshold of near bankruptcy and catastrophe. I wonder how many males were on that board at that time. I won't go there. But I do want to, I guess, get your perspective, seeing kind of the doom and gloom news we've been getting in different sectors of our society, of our economy. In terms of pulling from within what exists in these facilities, how do you see that evolving? Is there an approach that you're contemplating in dealing with these pressures that are going to continue to build because of the lack of resources? Has that been a subject matter that has been addressed by either the commissioners or if you have as a reappointee or a new appointee, how do you think you would handle that particular scenario?
I think a couple of issues that we've been dealing with. But first of all, when I first became commissioner of the Housing Authority, we were close to, we were at a deficit. Now this year we are making money. We're a high-performing agency. Our parameters and our boxes within HUD and the regulatory issues and the kinds of revenue that we can make are antiquated and basically are very limited in any kind of scope of innovation or flexibility. It really sucks. There's no other word to work with HUD. It sucks. I mean,
the term of art.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to be a good sucky to be. Anyway, be that as it may, we've been working very diligently in trying to come up with regulatory innovation. That means giving us a lot more flexibility in this new administration and speaking to the kind of leadership that we have so that we can have a lot more flexibility in the kind of outcomes that we want to create for the different issues that we're dealing with. For example, if we're looking at public safety to try to get the public housing to be a priority when it comes to installing cameras in our facilities, for example. We are speaking to HUD and a variety of other administration officials about giving us more flexibility so we could deal with the gang issue in a very different way. So we're hoping that with the window that we have in the next couple of years of changing the kind of direction that the previous administration was having us do, which was, and Councilman Cardenas would appreciate this, that every single site had to be its own separate property management plan. Now, can you imagine all of the properties that we had to have, every single site have its own budget, have its own portfolio, and then you couldn't do anything with any kind of flexibility when it came to what the site needed. You had to refinance the site. It was just insane. So hopefully with this administration, we don't want to do that. We want to create an opportunity for us to get more funding that is tied to outcomes that are real for the families, that we're talking about grades, we're talking about performance, and we're talking about not building units that are ridiculously small and don't meet the needs of a community like Los Angeles that needs larger housing units, and replacing the old much more easier. The kind of financing that we're going to need just for Jordan Downs, for instance, We anticipate anywhere from $800 million to $1 billion worth of national, federal monies as well as state and local monies to be able to make that work. And that's anywhere from replacing the 700-plus units to 1,500 to 2,300 units, depending on where we end up with the community as to how dense we want that project to be. So it's going to take a lot of work. We know what we're dealing with in the next couple of years in terms of leveraging our federal relationships, but it's going to even take more work knowing where we are with the state and the kind of opportunities we're going to need. One of the threats that I see for us is that we don't take away from other communities and other efforts to be able to build affordable housing, but we're adding to the stock rather than taking away from others. And that's going to be a very delicate political, regulatory, legal balance that we're going to have to take.
Is the market ready in those particular areas to introduce mixed income, where you could have market rate units to set off some of the deficits and enhance revenue for these sites?
Well, we would love to have the opportunity to present before council the Urban Land Institute study, that panel that we had, that really spoke to the kind of mixed income community that we would like to create at Jordan Downs.
But do you feel the market is ready for that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mixed income being very low,
Right.
and market. So we're not talking about just low,
No.
moderate, and then high.
Well, that's what I mean about decentralizing poverty.
Yes, absolutely.
You do it in a very real, physical way, but it's also a reflection of the demand in being closer to workplaces, because you have very strategic locations, especially in Jordan Downs, near the west side, near the airport, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Then, without objection, we will forward these three recommendations to the council for appointment. So I say congratulations on your appointment, and again, congratulations in advance of your reappointments, and you are already done.
Thank
you. Okay. All right, Ms. Barclay, any more business before this council?
No, sir.
Then this council's adjourned.
Okay. I'm so blind. Oh, God. You know what?